Well, the emergency's all over, and I'm so thankful for that. And now we've got the task of putting everything back the way it was, unloading the vehicles and getting everything back into order. And I want to take this time as I go through this to talk about some of the takeaways, lessons learned, and maybe help you if you're ever in this situation. And the first thing I want to talk about is having a list, a checklist, and I love checklists that you can literally check or mark off, mark through, of things that you need to take in the event you've got to get out quick. And you need to think about something where you're out of here very, very quick and you have to just grab your stuff and go. Obviously, the most important thing is going to be meds, very important documents, things like that. And there's some great videos about that, and there's some good checklists out there. But the main thing is to have it and have it ready. But be prepared to be altering and adjusting that list as you go. For instance, I sent my wife and my mom on, and they took things from the checklist, and I actually made her a quick on-the-fly checklist. And after she went, I marked off those things that she took, because those things were now gone. I didn't have to worry about them again. And so you want to be revising your checklist as you go, as the situation warrants it. Next thing I want to talk about is go bags or bug out bags. Now, obviously, being a prepper, I have a bug out bag, and truth be told, I have a couple. But for each member of your family, each person that's going to have to possibly evacuate, you need to have a starter bag. And we'll take my mother, for instance. She's 90 years old. She is not going to be shouldering a backpack, and she doesn't drive. She doesn't have a car with a bug out bag in the trunk. This is what I have for her. I just have an old gym bag, and really the only thing that's in it right now is going to be a hygiene bag or an overnight case. And those are just items that she doesn't use daily. That's like if you're going, on a trip or something like that. Just a little overnight hygiene case, and that's in there, and that's all that's in there. That's a starter kit. So come the evacuation, you can go grab a couple days worth of clothes, throw in there. You grab the meds, throw in there, and the things that you have to use on a daily basis that can't be sitting in a bag, in a trunk or in a closet. You can grab that bag, and that's what that's dedicated to. So I think everyone, whether you're a prepper or not, should have these two basics ready to go. The next takeaway is pets. You have got to consider what you're going to do with your pets. When I was sitting on that overpass, and that state trooper wouldn't let me come back in to get back home where my mom was, there were probably 30 people, probably at least 20 cars lined up wanting to get through. And it was getting pretty emotional. There were men yelling, there were women yelling, and this one girl, I guess she was probably about 20, I don't know. She was crying. She just lost it because her horse and her dogs were at home, and he was telling her that she couldn't go get them. And and I won't speak to her emotional state or the import of a horse over a person, but the point is you've got to consider them too. And we have dogs and cats, and we have a box or crate for each animal. And then we have, this is just a bucket that I've thrown together, and it will stay thrown together. And this is just tie out stuff, because if you've got dogs, you've got to figure out what are you going to do. You can't keep them in the car. You can't keep them in the crate. Where you go may have a fence, it may not. But you need to have a way to secure them and at least let them stretch their legs a little bit. You've got to take food with you. It'd be a good idea if their shot records were in your important papers that you take with you. Because if your dog ends up biting somebody while you're out there in the evacuation at the evacuation center or wherever you're at, you need to be ready to provide the authorities your shot records. So you got to think about the pets beforehand, just like you do people. Now let's talk livestock. Horses and cows and things like that, goats, you're really going to have to plan ahead. And very few people actually have enough trailers and carriers that they could take all their animals at one time. So you have to really think ahead. I've just got the chickens. And to be honest with you, my plan was to leave the door open. If we had to get out of here, I was just going to open the gate and let them fare as they do. They're chickens. They're not pets for us. They work here. And whether you agree with that plan or not, you need to have a plan. If you're going to take your chickens with you, figure out how you're going to do it. I'll tell you right now, that's a lot of real estate in that truck to be taking a bunch of chickens. But you need to plan. One of my biggest takeaways from this last week is because it was not an evacuation with a start and stop, gone. It was this continual thing where we evacuated my mom and my wife, but then I sat on standby for 2 days for a few hours, literally with the truck running, just to keep the sheriff happy, but never actually pulled the trigger. And one thing I saw out of that was I would at night have everything in the truck ready to go. Then in the daytime, as I was up and around, I could see clearly. Communication was a little better. You know, they were doing reports on the news and stuff like that. I relaxed my my evacuation posture, I guess. I pulled some stuffs out of the truck that I needed, that I was going to use. And what I needed to do then was I created a new list. And this is it, as a matter of fact, the Get the F Out of Dodge list. And this was just a checklist that I had out, that if suddenly the word came down, go, bam, do those things. And you can see here, I'd pulled the dog food out because I was feeding the dogs. I'd pulled the dog mats out because the dogs had to sleep. I pulled the computers out because I was using them. So those were things that needed to go back in to the truck if suddenly we had to go. And of course I kept the chickens at the top, because obviously I wasn't going to free them ahead of time, and I just wanted to in the excitement of leaving, if I had to not forget that. So be prepared that even if you have a nice laminated, computer printed checklist, be prepared to augment that, to be changing that, and to be adding to that. And I never thought about it, but my GFOD list was something that was constantly changing. I kept it literally on the back of the truck, in the tailgate, so that if the word came, I knew what I had taken out, so that I knew what to put back in. Next thing I want to talk about is plans for evacuation and for return from evacuation. You need to have several plans. In our case, we had, well, my wife and my mother left, and I had a plan for evacuation, which is by truck with the dogs, and I had a SHTF plan, which was my neighbor's boat. If for some reason we decided that we could not leave in the vehicles, he had his boat ready to go. And it's good to have, whether it's I'm going to walk out of here plan, whatever it is, have an SHTF backup plan. And then there's the plan for return. Neighbor right across here, they have a McMansion right behind those trees there, and they have a little cattle ranch, a small thing, but it's a cattle ranch. Rich people. They evacuated, and they couldn't come back for quite a while because the road that they enter on got burned up. So they came in on boat, and they went back to their house and got more stuff, looked around, and then left. So their house was fine, their stuff was fine. They lost a little bit of grass, but not much. But they could not drive back in. So they came back on boat. So be thinking of another way of returning, if that's at all possible. And then the last thing I want to talk about is depth of force, and I don't have it. I stayed up pretty much 2 nights in a row. And I'll admit, it wore my 58-year-old ass out. But at night, I didn't trust anyone else. I didn't have anyone else here that I trusted to not go to sleep. And that's a real problem in my preps, in my planning. I don't have depth in force. The one person I did trust, I sent away. And I had people in the daytime, and I could nap then. But that makes me think about any other SHTF situation or WROL situation where I might need to mount security continually or for a number of days. And I just do not have the depth and force to do that. And it's a problem I've got to deal with. And it may be a problem you have to deal with too. So, those are the takeaways that I gleaned from this little adventure. And I really want to thank you again for your prayers and your warm wishes and your interest in our welfare. And I want you to remember the firefighters and the first responders and even the cops manning the roadblocks.